it's not just about pushing through pain, but it's about learning to give yourself grace along the way and also finding joy along the journey.
Amberly Lago, the host of the True Grit and Grace podcast. She's also the best-selling author of True Grit and Grace, the book. And she also has an incredible mastermind. Welcome to the Empowered Life podcast. My name is Rudi, and today I get to introduce you to one of my favorite people on planet Earth. She is a powerful superstar, and I will tell you, she is the most grounded, authentic, passionate person, always in service of everybody else. And because of how she shows up in every single room, door after door after door constantly opens for her. Amberly Lago is, in my opinion, the example of what does it look like to lead your life with heart, with soul, taking all of what's happened to you and using it to support and empower people around you. And I had the privilege of meeting Amberly at an event where we spoke together. And I was just enamored with her energy and her ability to just be a servant person and leading with a servant heart. And I then spoke at her event and have since spoken at a number of events alongside her and continue to watch her journey from afar as she just enters room after room, and the rooms get bigger and the crowds get bigger and the breakthroughs get bigger and the opportunities get bigger. And it's because she gives people permission to look at their life, to look at their journey, and not look at it as a struggle, but as an opportunity to not only heal, but to help other people heal from their journey. Amberly Lago is also the host of the True Grit and Grace podcast. She's also the best-selling author of True Grit and Grace, the book. And she also has an incredible mastermind. Amberly, it is so long overdue to get you on the Empowered Life podcast. I love you, my friend. I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Oh, Rudi, I love you so much. That was the best introduction I've ever had. I'm not just saying that. I don't know if you could tell, but I got a little misty-eyed just hearing you talk. You are so kind, and I'm so grateful for you, and I'm so inspired by your podcast, and I know why everybody loves it so much. It's because you're so amazing. So to have this opportunity to get to be here with you and your audience is it's truly an honor. So thank you so much.
I'm going to turn this love fest back on you again for just one more moment, because I know how incredibly busy you are and your schedule is jam-packed. You're about to get on another plane. You're going to another city. You're doing another event. Then you come home. You're home for 2 days. You get another plane. You go away. You're there for 4 days. You come back. You've got another event. And so I get to have these conversations with you privately over the phone. And I know how busy you are. I know how overworked you are. I know how much stress and pressure you're under, because when the limelight's on you, the pressure's on you. And then to still carve out some time for us right now, late on a Friday afternoon, so that we can squeeze this in so that our audience can get to meet and get to know you. I just want to say thank you so much for your time. I want to acknowledge it's your most invaluable resource, and spending it with our empowered community means the world to me. And I know it's going to mean the world to them as well. So thank you so much again.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for being in my life. You are a blessing.
You're the blessing. Every room you walk into feels that way. And that's why you're so successful. But you weren't always that way. And I love to start every podcast episode asking somebody to go through their journey and share with us what really set them up to be who they are today. Today, you're the best-selling author. You've got a top 1% podcast in the world, which, I mean, that is an accolade in itself. I mean, hugely successful podcast. Hugely successful book. You launched your book on the Today Show. I mean, just how much success has followed you in your career is a testament to who you are as a person. But I know your story, and I know your story wasn't an easy one. And I know it's such a good story, because through sharing your story, there's so many opportunities for people to learn how you got to be the person that you are today. And as you start to tell us your story, I want our audience to pay attention. If you're learning about Amberly for the first time today, Amberly Lago has been dealt some really powerful blows that for most people, they wouldn't get back up. And you've gotten up every single time. You talk about grit, you talk about grace, you talk about resilience, you talk about living this life and moving forward and taking action. But I'm in awe of how you do it day after day after day, knowing everything that you've gone through. Please share with our audience a little bit about what has been your journey that has supported you to becoming the person that you are today, because I don't believe you would be who you are if it hadn't been for everything that you had to go through.
Well, thank you, Rudi. And you know what? Sometimes when I hear you, sharing that I'm a best-selling author and top podcast and this and that, I'm like, oh, wow, that's me. Because uh, 6 years ago, I didn't even own a computer. And so I had big dreams of writing a book and starting a podcast. And I had a lot of people going, "Oh, you're the fitness girl. Like, you need to stick to the fitness. You don't have a college education. You don't even own a computer. Like, who do you think you are?" And so that was motivation for me to go, "Oh, I'm for sure going to write a book now." But, I think when I think back, everything that we go through, every struggle, every challenge is an opportunity to strengthen our resilience and build our grit if we choose to let it. And I was just talking to another mom at my daughter's school today, and she was talking about, she goes, "Yeah, well, I'm very successful now, but I had a really hard upbringing." And I said, "Oh, really? Me too." I said, "But you know what? It taught us a lot, didn't it?" And she goes, "Well," and I said, "Well, I guess it can or it can't." I said, "Because here my brothers, they've not gotten the help and the mindset, and one's in jail and one's in and out of jail and in and out of rehab." And I only say that because um, we are all given these chances, but I grew up where it was pretty hard. I mean, my parents did the best they could, but there was sexual abuse, there was addiction, there was divorce, and there was my older brother who used to really just beat the crap out of me, and I didn't know that that wasn't normal until I went around other families, and I was like, "Oh, you mean your brother doesn't punch you in the face?" And in that moment, I think having to fend for myself, having to protect myself, it did a couple of things. Like, there was one part of me that, and Rudy, you and I have talked about this off air, where I felt like, oh, well, when I told somebody, when I told my dad I needed help and I didn't get help, I felt like, oh, I'm not worthy of even helping or saving or protecting. But there was this other part of me that I went with that was like, well, if I'm going to be safe and I'm going to make something out of my life, then it's up to me to do it. And from that day on, I fought my stepdad off the next time he tried to come in my bedroom. He never laid a hand on me again. I started taking boxing and Krav Maga and Muay Thai kickboxing. And I developed the confidence. So if, my brother tried to ever beat me up again, it was like I felt like I could fend for myself. And then fast forward, I thought, I don't want to be around any more dysfunction. I want to make something out of my life. And so I knew if I wanted to do that, I was going to have to work to get there. And so I had 4 jobs. I saved up enough money, $1,200, packed my little Suzuki Samurai, moved to California. And against so many people saying, "What are you doing? Like, you're never going to make it as a professional dancer. You think you're going to make it? You're going to make something of yourself in Hollywood." People were placing bets I'd be back to Texas in 2 weeks. But I think pain pushes you until your passion and your purpose can pull you. And the pain that I experienced from the sexual abuse, the physical abuse, I was like, that pushed me. I was like, I am getting away from that. Then I landed my first gig dancing with MC Hammer in a music video. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're paying me to do this. This is amazing. Went on to be in the fitness industry, and I loved being active and getting to, help people. And I just love working with people. But that all changed. This successful fitness career in the blink of an eye was gone just like that when I got hit by an SUV while riding my motorcycle. Um, I was rushed to the hospital and put in induced coma. And when I woke up from a coma, I learned I had a 1% chance of saving my leg from amputation. And in that moment, I chose to focus on that 1%, that I was like, "Okay, so you're saying there's a chance." I had always, my whole life, felt like the underdog, or I had to fight for, to get to be safe, I had to work hard. And so I already had that in me of, well, may as well go for it. I guess that's what I focused on. And I really think all the challenges I went through, and the mentor I had from, my coach, my dance teacher, who was, man, she was like a drill sergeant, that helped me develop mental toughness. And it also taught me to push through pain. And that's what got me through 34 surgeries to save my leg from amputation. Um, but the real journey began, and I think pain has been my biggest teacher. I was diagnosed as a result of this accident with complex regional pain syndrome, which is an incurable nerve disease that leaves you in constant chronic pain. And I think that throughout my journey of going through these surgeries, of having to learn to love myself and, accept all the scars and accept where I was and who I was now on my journey, because it was hard. I felt like my whole identity was wrapped up into what I did for a living and what I looked like being a dancer and in the fitness industry. And so it's been a whole learning process, and through it, I have developed more tools for resilience and how to get through challenging times, and how it's not just about pushing through pain, but it's about learning to give yourself grace along the way and also finding joy along the journey. So that was kind of a long answer for kind of how it was and where I got to where I am now.
So you say that was long, and yet when I listened to every word so intently, you summarized so much in such a short amount of time. And I want our audience to really hear what you said so that they can take the value of this. When somebody is on a podcast, it's polite to introduce them and to be kind and to make them sound larger than life and to say, "Oh, I'm really excited and welcome this person." And when I introduce you, I am speaking truth. I am in awe of how you show up in every moment as who you are as a person. I know what you've gone through. We've had so many private conversations. I've heard you speak on stage, and I want to ground something, because I think this is what I take so much from what is your life experience and how you show up as a person today. You've had a very difficult past. You've had a very difficult life with many challenges that you could not have anticipated or expected. You've built yourself and picked yourself back up again and again. And then there have been these moments that have knocked you back down where you've had to question again, who are you? How are you going? And your ability to show up vulnerably, to speak about the pain, to speak about the suffering. You started your conversation talking about having to stand up for yourself, getting the courage to do that, going to your father, saying to your father, "I need help," and not getting the support that you needed, and then processing that as unworthiness. So many people, they wouldn't want to say that. They wouldn't want to publicly tell anybody that, especially when they become famous, especially when they become known. When people see them and they put them on a pedestal, you're the first person to talk about what your life taught you and how difficult it was and what the pain was. You're also the first person to still acknowledge that you still struggle with the insecurities today. You still feel the pain today. And I think that's why doors open for you everywhere you go, because you're in the self development space. You're in the space where you're supporting and empowering mostly women, but everybody benefits from the work that you do by teaching people that everything that happens in your life is serving you for who you get to become. And I've got to have a front row seat to watch you again and again and again grace these stages and these platforms and these podcasts and get invited into these really big rooms, because when you walk into these rooms, you do it with such vulnerability, and you do it because you're not trying to gain a following or get a like or have another hashtag. You're doing it because you know the value in the support in somebody learning through your journey. You've named your book and your podcast To Grit and Grace. I would love to know, what do those words mean to you, and why did you name that your book and your podcast?
Oh, well, thank you, Rudy. I wrote about 90, well, first of all, I hand wrote about 90% of my book because I didn't own a computer. And then I asked my good friend who had published a bunch of books, I said, what kind of laptop do I need to type up my book? And so I didn't also have the name. I was like, I'm not sure and I kept telling my editor, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to name my book. He goes, don't worry about it. You'll hear it. You'll hear it in a dream. You'll hear it on the radio. You'll hear it in passing, or, it'll come to you. So it was about, oh gosh, it was 2 years after my accident, and I had had a non-union in my leg for it was about 2 inches, and it was just taking forever for the bone to grow back together. And they had said, "We're gonna have to do a bone graft and take bone from your hip and put it in your leg if it does not if it doesn't heal." So I was doing everything to get that healed, and I'd gone to the doctor and did this X-ray, and it had finally grown back together, and I was so excited I wasn't gonna have to have another surgery, and, I did a post on Instagram, and I showed my X-ray, and the X-ray is like, there's still broken pieces of titanium, there's a rod, there's screws, you can see where there's some broken screws, and the leg is you can tell how deformed it is, and I got to my daughter's barn, and one of the other moms said, "Oh my gosh, Amberly, I saw your post. I had no idea that your leg looked like that. You have got grit and grace." And I was like, "Oh my goodness, can I use that?" And she goes, "You're welcome." So my good friend Amelia is the one who I heard that and I was like, "True grit and grace." That's the name because it has taken so much grit, and it does, whether you are an entrepreneur or whether you're a mom chasing after your kids, or no matter what you're doing, if you're building a business, have a side hustle, what it takes grit. And I was always really good at grit. I can't say I'm good at a lot of things, but I was a hard worker. I could just outwork. I could, if I needed to get better in dance, I would just take more classes. If I needed to get better and faster on the track, I would just condition myself more. And what I learned through this journey is it's not just about working hard, but it is, I had to learn to listen to my body. I had to learn to love myself again. I had to learn to look down at my scars on my leg with as strength and growth instead of disgust and hate. And I also the grace that I've learned to give myself, it was also the gift of grace from God because throughout my journey, here I was this highly, I had this business that I loved that was so successful. And I went from that to $2.9 million dollars worth of medical expenses, a lien on our house, lost my business, my legs deformed, felt like I lost my identity and my confidence was knocked right out of me. And the nerve disease led me to really trying to stuff down the pain. And the physical pain led to emotional pain, which led to me isolating myself, which led to addiction and me drinking every day. And so the grace, I actually got sober in the middle of writing my book. And at the time, I didn't talk about sobriety that much because I had so much shame that I went from being this elite athlete to how did a good girl like me end up here? I thought I was so different from the addicts in my family. I was the worker, the one that was so career driven and by the grace of God, I got sober in 2016, and I ended up writing a little bit about it in my book because I thought so many people suffer and struggle and fight battles that no one knows about in on their own in behind closed doors, and I felt so alone. And I think it was the grace of God that gave me the courage to reach out for help and allowed me to find a community of people. And I think that if you really want to be successful, if you really want to be resilient, then connection is where it's at. It's grit plus connection plus the grace.
I want to share with you that when I first met you, and I had the privilege of going to dinner with you one night, and we got to sit together, and we didn't know each other. We were getting to know each other at the time. But I knew enough of you and I knew enough of your story, having seen you socially and seen you speak, but never in person. And we sat down to dinner, and you didn't order a drink. And I didn't order a drink because I was aware that you used to drink and that you had stopped drinking. And so I didn't want to have a drink sitting next to you while we were having dinner. So I had water, but I really wanted to have a drink and I didn't. And I never had a drinking problem. I would have one drink a day, two drinks a day, and that would be my life. That would be my cycle. It would be my pattern, my behavior. I come home from work, open a bottle of wine, and that would be my routine. But we sat down that evening and I really wanted to have a drink. I was desperate to have just a whiskey and to let the day go and wash it off my back, but I didn't because of you. And we ended up sitting that evening with two other people, and both of those people were also recovering alcoholics and they did not have a drink. And one person sitting next to us did have a drink. And I sat there that day thinking, who do I want to be? And when we left the dinner that evening, after having just the most beautiful conversation, I went and sat in the lobby bar of the hotel I was staying at, and I had a drink talking to my wife on the phone. This was 10 o'clock at night. I still had to order a drink at the bar so I could get my drink before I could go to bed that night and close out my day. And on the phone, my wife and I were talking about drinking. And I said to her, it is ridiculous. It's 10 o'clock at night and I'm sitting here having a drink, by myself, talking to you, but I'm having a drink by myself at a bar because I feel the need to have a drink. And she had been on a business trip at that time, and she was hanging out with a lot of clients and there was a lot of drinking because that's what's expected when you're entertaining and there's all these dinners and meals. And she said, when we get home, why don't we do 2 weeks no alcohol? And I said, I'm in. And we did 2 weeks no alcohol, and we still haven't had a drink. And it has been, I want to say, a year and a half, if not longer, since then.
Wow.
And
I
it's
just
been the
got
most,
goosebumps.
yes. And she got to it in a different way and I got to it in a different way, but it was so inspiring to be able to sit and have dinner and not have that be a part of my dinner, not have that be a part of my life. But it was in the moment of leaving that dinner and feeling the need to go and find alcohol. I needed to go to a bar because that's how I close out my day. That's how I find my value. And that
Mhm.
was when I realized, you know what, I think I have a problem here. Even if it's one drink a day or two drinks a day, that's enough to know you have a problem if at 10 o'clock at night you've got to go and sit in a lobby bar by yourself and talk to your spouse or your partner while you have that drink to normalize it. And it was just such a beautiful reminder. And I just wanted to say thank you for playing a part in that.
Oh, that makes me so happy for you that. And I had no idea, like, that you weren't ordering a drink because I didn't have a drink, you know what I mean? And I don't like, my husband drinks, he doesn't drink every day, he's a normie, as we say in recovery, he's a total normie. He can, like, drink half a beer and leave it, and I'm like, "Why would you there's half a beer here, you aren't gonna finish that?" Like, but it's, there's a saying when the bottle starts to call your name or the alcohol starts to call your name and you're starting to think about it, that's when I knew I had a problem. And I mean, I knew I don't have a problem with anybody else who wants to have a drink or any of that, but I knew that I became physically dependent on it. And when I stopped, I had tremors, like I had withdrawal. It was the scariest thing ever. And even scarier was admitting that I needed help and then going and finding recovery. And let me tell you, I was sneaking the drinking. I went from sneaking the drinking to sneaking going to recovery. Crazy. But, it's changed my life and introduced me to an incredible community. And I'm grateful that it's wild because I tend to attract people that don't drink. And whether they're, in recovery or they just don't drink, it's wild. It changes your life.
I love so much the example that you set, and to have had so much sobriety and knowing that I never had to go through tremors, I never had to give it up and have this moment where my body had to detox what I'd been doing. I'd never gotten to that point, but
Thank
I'm going to be
goodness.
very bold and say I was absolutely on that path because every day come 6 o'clock, I needed to have a drink. And that's enough to know that there's a problem because that bottle was saying, oh, it's just a glass of wine or it's just a whiskey. And, this is how you finish your day. And to no longer have that hold on me, my wife says this all the time. She'll say that she always thought that, she needed to have that glass of red wine every day and that she couldn't not have it. And then in her mind for years, she was saying, I wish I didn't need it. And then she would say, oh, I won't drink during the week. But, come Monday, she would say, oh, just today. Oh, it was a hard day and justify that one thing and that one thing and that one thing. And that's just another example of how you create an impact in people's lives simply
Mhm.
by just being you and how you get to show up. And that was such a big shift in my life. And I had no intention of talking about that on the podcast today. And we've spoken about that very vocably
I was surprised when, you shared that with me. We were on a phone call and you'd shared that, or maybe we were in person. We may have been in person. I just want to say to the listeners how generous you are and how much you've changed my life, because you could tell I was recently telling myself this story of like, oh, I have to do everything by myself. Nobody helps me. Nobody gives me anything. Like, I can't believe, because we were talking about how I was going to get some sort of treatment for CRPS, and they were gifting it to me. And you caught me in that, and you gave me an exercise to do to change that story. And I just want to show you that I have been writing a page every day. So, to your listeners, Rudi, in all his amazingness, he's like the best coach ever, um, said, I want you to write down a whole page every day of everything that you've ever done that you're really proud of yourself for doing. Like anything. It could be like, you have two beautiful daughters, you have a great marriage, or you did a TED talk, or you've got a top podcast. And so I have been doing it, and I want to thank you for that. So you've had a huge impact on my life.
Well, thank you so very much. I appreciate you so much. And I just want to say I'm really proud of you because you just showed us, and I know everyone's listening to this, but she picked up a really big journal. And that is not a tiny little 8 by 10. She picked up a monster sized journal. And
It's a monster size for
every line is full. There is no blank space, and you filled it. And I just want you to know I'm really proud of you for doing it. So you said something in the beginning of the podcast episode today that you were born and raised in an environment that was really difficult, very toxic. You used the word dysfunctional, and that you seemed to come out of it because you made a choice, and that you have two brothers that unfortunately did not have that same shift. And I would like to know, having gone through your life experience, being the inspirational person that you are today, helping pull other people forward so they can find their purpose, they can find their meaning, and they can go out in the world and share their light with the world. How would you support somebody in making that choice, that they pick the path that serves them versus the path that is adding to the destruction?
Well, that's such a great question. And I've often wondered that, because I thought, why did I go after my dreams and so like pack up my things and move to Los Angeles? And I traveled the world dancing, had a very successful business. And I think the biggest difference was I had an outlet. I think it's so important for children to have an outlet. So it may not have been safe in my home. And so it was safe at the dance studio and on the track, running track with my coach, being on the bus, sitting in the front seat with my track coach. Um, and I focused on things that brought me joy and things that made me feel good and things that I could do to make myself feel empowered and better. And so I became, an honor student, a straight A student. I became, I was the choreographer for the drama team and the choreographer for the cheerleaders. I started choreographing for drill teams. Football's huge in Texas, and choreographing for all the drill teams in the area. I started teaching dance. I got awarded for being, an excellent teacher. So I was getting these awards and these accolades, and was Miss Greenville High School. And I'm not trying to say, oh, I'm this and that. I'm just saying that instead of in that moment, instead of turning to drinking or drugs, because I never did that. I mean, I occasionally had a wine cooler when I was, that age, but I had friends that were smoking pot and doing drugs, and I always had a healthy fear of that. What I did was I really focused on all the things that made me feel good, and I had that outlet with dance. And I felt like the more I focused on the good, the better things got. And so, that's why I'm so grateful. Like, my youngest daughter has her outlet is horseback riding, and my husband has been like, "Oh my gosh, I wish it's so expensive and it's so much to the horse shows and all that. It's so expensive." I'm like, horseback riding is her outlet. That's where she goes to connect. That's where she learns her resilience and grit and to get back up when she gets thrown off, and compassion and confidence and patience. And so I think it's really important that your children have an outlet. Not that you have to be like a mom that I don't know what that term is, where they're always in something, karate and dance and horseback riding and soccer and all that. Not that, not too much, but something just for them to feel like they can build their confidence and excel. I think that's what really helped me.
I think that is so powerful. And I'm curious if that is the same process you use to pick yourself back up. And I want to set the stage one more time for our audience. You came from a really, really difficult childhood, and then you had to create and navigate a path for yourself. And then you achieved success. You started a phenomenally successful dance career. And then you became the fitness girl. And you keep talking about that. And you were one of the first fitness personalities that really blew up in the fitness space. And then all of a sudden you're hit by a car, literally an SUV, and you almost lose your leg. Can I ground for another moment? You were riding a Harley Davidson at the time. So you're on a motorcycle and you get hit by an SUV. And now you're on the journey of, you said, 34 surgeries over a period of years to rebuild your leg. You might lose your leg. You have a 1% chance of keeping your leg. And everything that you've built, everything you put your value in, it's all gone. How do you pick yourself back up from that?
Um, well, I think that what I started doing, what really, really helped me in the hospital, because um, I was pretty focused on like from the minute that I woke up out of a coma and they said, you've got a 1% chance. I was like, okay, then we need to find a doctor who's going to fix it. And we literally signed papers to stop the surgeon that was going to amputate it so he could not touch me and operate. And man, we made phone calls, pulled a lot of strings, and I got transferred to a different hospital where I had Dr. Wiss do surgery after surgery and save it. So somewhere in between, I don't know, surgery 12 or 14, I started spiraling down. I remember it was in the middle of the night. They would change the bandages on my leg every 3 hour, and the pain that they would lift my leg up. I had these metal rods that basically held my bones in place. And every time they would lift my leg up to change the bandages, because my leg was completely open, you could see the inside of my leg. I had compartment syndrome. It was like re-breaking my leg again every time they would lift it up to change the bandages. And they did this every 3 hours. And so I wouldn't sleep. I was just like awake, looking at the clock, watching infomercials. And there was this one infomercial that came on, and it was this gorgeous girl running on the beach in her bikini. And I was like, wow, what if I never run again? What if my husband leaves me? What if they amputate my leg tomorrow? Like, what if I can't chase after my kids? What if I die? I was spiraling down. And I thought, wait a minute, I've got a choice here. I can focus on oh, what if all the horrible things that could happen, or I can be grateful for being alive, being here, having breath, having great doctors. And so I grabbed this little notepad, I still have it, and started writing down everything that I was grateful for, the nurses that were taking care of me, the doctors, the friends, the clients, the people that were bringing me flowers, food, just coming to sit and pray with me and over me. And part of it was I was writing down the names of everything because I knew I wanted to write thank you notes, and I would be so hazy and stuff from all the medication. I did not want to forget to write a thank you note to these people that came in to see me. And I noticed as I would write what I was grateful for, as I would write thank you notes to people, it shifted the way that I felt. I started feeling hopeful. I started feeling like confident that I was going to move forward. Another thing that I did, because I do think gratitude is alchemy, became my medicine for my mindset. Another thing that I did was the doctors thought I was crazy, but I asked the doctor, I was like, hey, Dr. Wiss, I need you to bring me a pull up bar. I need a pull up bar installed over my bed. He's like, well, what do you mean? I said, I know I bet I can't get out of this bed, but I want to keep my upper body strong and I want to be able to use that bedpan on my own. And so I got a pull-up bar installed over my bed. I had one of my friends that was another trainer bring me some dumbbells, and I'm pretty sure he stole them from the gym, but he brought me some dumbbells, and I was doing curls, and it wasn't that I wanted to get big buff arms or muscles in my upper body. Moving my body moved my mood, it boosted my confidence, and it made me feel like I was in control of something, and it made me feel like I was moving in the right direction, and so I still think movement moves your mood. I work out, it's one of my non-negotiables, and another thing that when I think back that really, really helped me was I was being of service to anybody I could and however I could, and I had people go, "How could you be of service? You were bedbound. You were stuck in a hospital bed." I was making phone calls to clients. I was setting up nutritional plans. I was, setting up workout plans. The nurses, once they found out I was a fitness instructor, they were asking me for exercise tips, and they're like, "Hey, how can I get a better booty?" And I was giving them exercises to do and telling them exactly what in fact, when I got out of the hospital, I went back to the hospital just to see the nurses and do some exercises with them. And, so I was being of service however I could, and I think that when you're of service to others, it takes you off your trouble, out of your mind of being a victim, and when you can be of service to others and their success, it's so fulfilling. And so I think along with prayer, along with people coming to see me and having that connection, um, being of service, having the gratitude practice and moving however I could and focusing on small attainable goals. That's how I got through it. Like my first goal was it had been 2 weeks since I hadn't seen my daughter. I'm getting emotional about this. And I just wanted to see her. She was just turned 2. I'd never been away from her. And they said, "Well, we can't bring her into ICU, but if you're able to sit in a wheelchair, we can roll you out." So that was my first goal when I got out of a coma, was I was like, "Man, I gotta be able to sit in this wheelchair." And I'd try and my heart rate would shoot up or it would drop down and the pain was just it was just horrible. So I couldn't really sit in a wheelchair, but do you know, I think because those nurses could see how hard I was trying and the fact that my room was like the room where I had my own fridge and they would come in and get snacks and I was giving them exercise tips. They cleared the halls and they let my husband sneak my daughter into ICU and I got to see her. And so just being able to see her motivated me to get out of that hospital even faster. It'd take another like 3 months, but I got to see my little pumpkin baby girl, almost every day. My husband would bring her to see me after that.
But thank you for the vulnerability that you just allowed everybody to experience. It has been years since that moment, and yet we can still feel how much emotion is sitting under the surface when you just go back in your mind.
Yeah, I didn't even think about it for so long.
Oh my gosh. And just that's what I love so much about the level of vulnerability that you are able to bring in every single moment where you give people permission to heal, people permission to see what's right and how to take steps and how to take accountability and how not to stay in victimhood. And I know that so much of that is covered inside your book. And there's so many nuggets that help people reframe how they can take control of their lives. And that's why you're so successful, because you take the shift from pain into purpose and you make it look seamless. And I don't mean easy, but you make the
Yeah.
process look like it's just a part of who you are and how you get to show up. And I want
Yeah.
the audience to make sure that the most important part of everything that I took away from what you just shared was that no matter how bad it got in your environment, even when you were spiraling, you wanted to be of service of other people. And in being of service for other people, you started to create an impact in their life, which supported you, but your goal was to impact other people. And then people started opening doors for you. I spoke about today repeatedly how you walk into the biggest rooms on the biggest stages today, and the rooms get bigger and the doors get bigger and the audiences get bigger, and people are opening these doors for you because they want you to be in those rooms. So that someone is opening that door because of something you've done for them at some point in time. And then you go and tell us this most incredible story with tears streaming down your face of how the
The
nurses
floodgates
opened
came
the
down.
doors so you could see your daughter in the ICU. And it's again just a testament for what does that look like to be in service of other people at all times. I would love for you to share a little bit about what you do today, because I've had the privilege of seeing what you do in a room with powerful women who have also been held back, who were at some point in time disempowered, but they have the same passion on their hearts to do something profound in the world. Could you tell us a little bit about what you do and how you help people?
Oh, yeah, Rudy, thank you. And yeah, thank you for letting me cry and be vulnerable. I didn't cry for years and years and years. And then once I did some healing work, and all of a sudden, like, man, the floodgates just open and the tears came out. So thank you for letting me do that with you. Rudy, I feel like I'm the luckiest girl in the world that I get to work with these incredible ladies who do have passion. And you know what? I prayed for this. I said, God, please, I want to work with passionate women who are faith filled, who want to make a positive impact on the world. I teach these women how to share their story, how to get on stages, how to start their podcast, how to publish their book, how to really build their brands, their influences, or their influence and their impact so they can make a bigger income, so they can get out there and make a bigger difference. And I don't just teach them, I bring experts in to help, but then I give them a stage to stand on. And so we're doing this event again, April 20th in Dallas, and I've got about 8 mastermind people that are newer that are going to stand on stage and give a 10-minute TED style talk. And it's powerful. And I think one of the most powerful experiences was when Jennifer got on stage, and I was backstage running around, getting ready to introduce the next speaker and taking care of something else. And they said, Amberly, I think she needs you. And I ran over to the side of the stage, and she was frozen. I thought she was going to have a panic attack on stage. And she's like, oh, I can't breathe. This is so hard. This is harder than I thought. And I went on stage with her, and I just put my arm around her and I whispered in her ear, you've got this. And in that moment, she took a step forward and she held her chin up, and she just started sharing. And then she was sharing more and more and more. And she just got a standing ovation. The audience was going wild. Then she finished. She started jumping up and down, saying, I did it. I did it. And now she has like discovered her true purpose, and she's showing up on Instagram, and just the light bulb came on. And so I get to work with women and walk with them on this journey. And so it's my favorite thing that I get to do. Like, we had a meetup yesterday, and I get off the call and I'm like, I get to do this. Like, I get to work with these women, and it feels so good when you get to do what you love.
I follow Jen right now, and she
Do
is
you?
so, yes, I love her. She's so active on social media, so confident. And I always think back to that moment in that room and how much permission you gave to all of these women to be able to take that step forward. And I know many of them had never spoken on a stage before, and today they get to say they speak on stages. And to speak on Amberly Lago's stage at her event, where she's bringing in some of the biggest speakers in the world, and they're speaking alongside these speakers, is just such an incredible gift that you get to give. You said so beautifully, I get to be with these women. I get to, and they feel exactly the same way about following you and doing the work that you do. I am friends with every single speaker and every mastermind member that was at that event. I've had conversations with all of them.
Everybody loves you, Rudy. Everyone loved you. Like, we did a survey, and you were top speaker. You and Henry, they loved Henry too, who, we love Henry Amar. but everybody loves you. You can't go anywhere and mention your name without somebody saying, "Oh my gosh, I love him. Isn't he brilliant?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." So, yeah, they get to say they shared the stage with you.
Oh my gosh, you are just so kind and always so generous with your words, with your time, with your nuggets. I want our audience to be able to connect with you in a deeper, more meaningful way. What are the best ways for them to follow you, to get into your community, to learn more about what it is that you're doing so that they can have the level of joy that I get to have in just
Oh,
knowing you?
thank you. Well, my favorite thing out of everything I've done, like from the book to speaking to the mastermind, it's connecting with people. That's my favorite thing, is to connect. So, like, the book signing, it's that I get to talk to people. The speaking events is that I get to talk to people backstage and in the audience. Like, I hang out in the audience so I can just connect. I think that's what it's all about. And so, your audience, I have a gift. They can text me the word grit, GRIT, to 818-214-7378. And that's me texting you back. So if you text the word grit, you're going to get a downloadable playbook that will teach you how to tap into your innermost resilience and thrive. But then you can also say, "Hey, Amberly, I heard you on Rudy's show," and ask me any questions. Sometimes it takes me a day or two to get back, but I will get back. I answer all those because I really like connecting. And you can find any of my upcoming events at amberlylago.com. And I hang out mostly on Instagram at Amberly Lago Motivation. But Rudi, thank you from the bottom of my heart for having me on your show. This is really a dream come true because I have been listening to your show and I've been listening for a long time and admire all that you do, and so blessed to be your friend. So thank you so much for having me on.
Amberly, thank you so much for joining us on the Empowered Life podcast. I love you as a human being. I love you as a speaker, as an author, as the most incredible and sensational podcast host. It's just such a privilege to get to know you and to get to journey this path with you. Thank you for shining your light out in the world. Thank you for never letting what happened in your past dictate your future. And thank you for giving every single listener permission to take accountability for what's happening in their life, for choosing what they want to do differently so that they can take new steps, take new actions, and ground every next step that they're about to take in service of somebody else. And if we all just did that and we did that every day in every way, we would all get to live the life that you're living. Thank you so much for joining us.